Greetings and welcome to Nathan's session. We have a couple of minutes before we will kick things off, but in the meantime, if you will please find your icon to join the chat window. If you're not seeing it, if you scroll maybe along the bottom of your screen or if along the top, hopefully it will show itself. We would love to hear who you are, where you are located, and how you currently support teaching and learning. So we will kick things off in approximately 3 minutes, but in the meantime, we love to hear who is out there joining us. So participate in the chat window. Oh, Nathan, you got Plymouth, Michigan. Do you know where that is?
Oh, I did my student teaching in Plymouth, Michigan.
Oh, you've got Beth Gonzalez from Plymouth, Michigan.
Oh,
He
man.
wants to know what school.
Yeah, it was Smith Elementary. I almost forgot. There's so many elementary schools in Plymouth.
Nice. We have some North Carolina people. We have had such a range of people joining these sessions. I don't know if I shared, we have had somebody from Egypt join us, from coast to coast of the United States. Like, they've just been popping up from everywhere, which has been amazing. It has really been able to lend itself to some great collaboration and conversation, just to kind of hear how things are happening and being approached a little differently depending on what region of the United States you're in. So we are thrilled to have everybody jumping in. We have about 1 minute and then we will kick things off. If you are just joining us, if you would please take a minute to jump into the chat window. This gives you a chance to find it, but to also share a little bit about who you are, where you're located, and how you currently support teaching and learning. It will certainly help Nathan as he starts to share. It also helps us here at the Friday Institute to know who we're attracting, who's coming into some of the sessions. All right, it is 2 o'clock on the dot. We are really prompt about these because we absolutely respect your time and the time that you have carved out to be able to join us. So on behalf of the Friday Institute, welcome. This is the session being facilitated by Nathan Hatt, entitled Rapid Design for PBL, Using Low Stakes Design Challenge to Teach Creative Fluency. So we are absolutely thrilled to have Nathan with us today out of Michigan, as well as all of you joining us from across the United States. My name is Shayla Rexroad. I am broadcasting live from the Friday Institute. We are located on the NC State campus in Raleigh, North Carolina, if you're not familiar with us. One of the things that's really unique about the Friday Institute is that we kind of dabble in a lot of different areas of education, specifically K-12. It is a location, a space where we like to say practice, policy, and research come together. The team that I am on that is actually hosting the virtual conference, we are the Professional Learning and Leading Collaborative. We focus specifically on researching and designing professional learning for educators, not only across North Carolina, but on a national basis. But we are always out there looking for what is innovative? What is innovation? What are innovative practices? How are educators thinking a little differently about creating spaces for their students that meet the whole needs of the student, but also provide them with spaces to be creative, to really demonstrate their understanding of things that they've learned in a different space, but also how are they building in connections to the bigger world, the spaces outside of their classroom. And that is why we were really excited to reach out to Nathan and have him come and present, because this is right up his alley. This is a lot of the work that he's doing. He is in a pre-K through 8th grade school. His official title is Lead Teacher and Project-Based Learning Coordinator, which he will share a little bit more about and unpack with you. Really quickly, before I hand it over to Nathan, as I mentioned, we do have the chat window open. We encourage you to utilize this throughout the session to post questions, comments, resources that maybe you're using. We are going to be downloading the chat and posting it, making it available following the session. So if there are specific things that you're like, oh, I wanted to grab that link or I wanted to grab that resource, you will have it. We are also recording each of the sessions and we will make them available back on the main agenda session page. So if you have a friend that you're like, oh, they would have loved this, or if you want to have the opportunity to go back and review it, you will have the option to do that in probably the next day or two. We will start working to get those posted. The last thing I will share is at the end, I will come back on and encourage you to complete a 2-question survey specifically for Nathan on this session. At the conclusion of the conference this evening, following our keynote by Darren Hudgens, which starts at 5 o'clock Eastern, we will email all attendees with a link for a conference evaluation, which will also provide information on how you can download and access a certificate for possible renewal credits. So again, that one will come at the conclusion of today. At the conclusion of Nathan's session, we will ask for feedback specifically for Nathan. With that, I am not going to take up any more of Nathan's time. I'm going to stop sharing, and Nathan, I'm going to let you take over and get yourself going.
Sounds good.
And I will let you know when your screens are up and we are running.
Okay.
All right, you are up. We see you.
Thank you, and thanks for the great introduction, Shayla. I just want to point a couple of things out before we dive in. For me, I need a lot of structure, so I have my presentation notes right here. So if you see me looking down, it's because I'm reading from them. And that's just because this is something I'm very passionate about, and this is something that I can talk a lot about, and I fear that I'll get into the weeds if I don't keep myself structured. So I'm sure if there's questions that pop up in the chat, Shayla, I'm sure you can help out with that. But I also have a question and answer session scheduled for the end. So you can also save questions for the end as well. So as Shayla said, my name is Nathan Hatt. I'm the lead teacher and project-based learning coordinator for A2 STEAM, which is a public pre-K magnet school in the Ann Arbor Public Schools here in Ann Arbor, Michigan. For the past nearly 6 years, A2 STEAM has been a laboratory setting for integrating project-based learning and STEAM principles, including rapid design challenges, which is the focus of this presentation. So it's through this lens that we will understand this work today. So I'm going to share a little bit more about my school and my personal journey for deeper context. So A2 STEAM was formerly a neighborhood K-5 school. And in the summer of 2014, community members started a process to revitalize the programming and re-articulate the philosophy that drives the school culture. The district began a process which resulted in new hires from within the district and from other innovative schools around the state of Michigan. I came from the HFLI network in Detroit. Schools in the HFLI network implement design thinking challenges for all students, in addition to the rigorous curriculum. And so through my time there, they provided some really valuable trainings from the Stanford Institute of Design with design thinking for educators workshops. And it was there that I was first introduced to the formal concept of a rapid design challenge. That said, however, what was attractive to me about the prospect of working at A2 STEAM was the opportunity to build a program from the ground up that designs units of study that are integrated with the curriculum, whereas the design thinking challenges at HFLI were kind of standalone. So there's quite a bit that could be unpacked if I were to try to describe all the programming at A2 STEAM. But what is obvious to most is that there's a focus on STEAM programming, which is STEM with arts integration. A big part of our STEAM programming is the Project Lead the Way curriculum, which runs from kindergarten through 8th grade. PLTW is an elective, however, and all other teachers use the PBL works framework for project-based learning to design integrated units of study that result in authentic public products. And these public products are a consequence of all the knowledge and skills that they've built throughout the project. Now, design thinking has been an extremely helpful procedural language used all over the school and functionally as a collaboration tool when teachers are working together to plan units. In fact, our process for planning projects is a combination of all three of these approaches. For each project, we take care to ensure that students have the opportunity to build STEAM skill fluencies. We use important elements from the PBL Works project planner to outline our project. And finally, we use design thinking protocols to facilitate dialogue, brainstorming, and negotiating throughout the process. During this time is when we identify where we distribute design challenges, including rapid design challenges. And so what you see here is actually also behind me in my office here, because this is an outlining that tool that we use all the time. So the question is, where does a rapid design challenge fit? We're going to walk through the process of planning the unit together to see how it works, and then we'll get a better understanding of where rapid design challenges fit into a PBL unit. So again, this is referencing the PBL Works framework for project-based learning. We start with standards. And so before embarking upon unit design, teachers take great care to organize their sequence for the whole year, but they still want to allow a little bit of flexibility, and this creates opportunities for integrated, authentic instruction. The second grade team at A2 STEAM has 3 major integrated PBL units each year, and their fall unit has a set of standards that have lined up like this. So they have economics, informational text, narrative writing, visual design, and coding. The next step in the process is to imagine possible public products. Public products are artifacts of learning that synthesize knowledge and skills and reach an audience outside of the classroom. So at this stage, we use a series of design thinking protocols called ideation that allow us to productively brainstorm through the creative process. And we always want to start with a set of criteria. That's important to front load because if you're doing this before you generate ideas, you're kind of creating some parameters that a common language for negotiation later on. For example, this particular set, the teachers identified that product should be authentic, should be a capacity for creative choice, and the project should be feasible. They shouldn't be more than the teachers are capable of handling. And so, you know, when teachers are making these negotiations, they refer back to that criteria. Is it authentic? What makes it authentic? Is it feasible? Etc. So usually we're able to generate scores of ideas in short order using some design thinking norms before we scrutinize them. And when we do, we refer back to the criteria set out at the beginning before we engage in the process of evaluation. What you see there is like a procedure of evaluating that's, it's like a type of coding. So it's kind of like a vote, but it really frames a conversation. So it's not as though going through this protocol, you're just picking the one that you're gonna go with, but you can start to see how other people are thinking. So obviously the C's stand for capacity for creative choice, the A is for authenticity, and the F for feasibility. Through that process, they usually come up with just one choice that we then workshop. And so the next consideration is the authentic audience. So some authentic audiences reach far outside of the classroom and into the greater community. And this is wonderful when it happens, but it's not the only metric for authenticity. So for this project, second graders were designing a game to teach their parents to be more thoughtful consumers. And this project was authentic because game design was of great personal interest, and they acquired a lot of relevant skills and knowledge to be savvy consumers and excellent game designers. So for this project, the audience was identified as families. And this in turn presented an excellent opportunity for presentation, as students would teach their families how to play their game while teaching valuable consumer practices. So at this point, we're really poised for backwards design because we know what the end of the project is going to look like. And so the next step is generating a driving question. The driving question frames the inquiry for the project. It should be open-ended, and the public products can be thought of as a series of suitable answers to that question. So for this project, the driving question is, how can we design a board game to teach our families how the goods we need get to us? For our purposes at A2 STEAM, we usually include in the driving question some clues about the public product. There's voice and choice and creative divergence within those parameters, but some guidelines need to be in place in order to effectively manage the expectations of group projects. So if we leave it out of the driving question, but that's our intention, is to have that game design as the public product, you're kind of risking some disappointment if students have different product concept that would be difficult to facilitate or would require a lot of teacher resources in order to get that group to where they need to go. That said, though, exceptions are made at times for divergent ideas as long as they can be defended. So if the driving question is the logical lead for the inquiry, the entry event is the hook. And like all good hooks, an entry event is meant to provoke a big feeling. So the driving question is the logic. That entry event happens before the logic so that students have that big feeling that compels them to want to answer a question. And so for this entry event, students were given pencils without pencil lead, and they were righteously outraged. And so the teachers coordinated a Twitter exchange with a local office supply distributor who apologized and told the students that the pencil lead was a scarce natural resource. And so after this, teachers introduced the driving question. The students engaged in the need to know protocol. The need to know protocol is from PBL Works. It's used for generating and organizing all the inquiry that happens at the beginning of a project, all the questions, and much documentation can be found on the PBL Works site. So with the project planning essentially bookended, what remains is the sequencing of instructional activities. PBL Works uses milestones for this process to encapsulate larger phases of learning as they progress. In this project, students started by learning more economic concepts and applying them to their daily life. Then they contextualized further and learned about local economies with a series of field trips and guest experts. And their last milestone in the inquiry phase was to pick a natural resource and trace its progression through the economy until it finally was for sale in the marketplace. So some of the work that students did during the inquiry phase was individual, some was in groups, and some in partnerships. However, the collaborative opportunities during these times were highly structured and mostly focused on knowledge and skill acquisition. Collaboration is a completely different entity when it's part of this creative synthesis that comes towards the end of a project. And so before we go any further in this project plan, I want to pose a question to the audience. What can get in the way of good collaboration?
All right. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to give you the opportunity to go into some small groups to share and talk a little bit more about this particular question. So in just a second, you're going to see a prompt appear on your screen inviting you to join a session. After a couple minutes, you will see a prompt asking you to rejoin. Please accept that prompt so it will bring you back into the session. All right, it should be popping up for you now. For those of you who have chosen not to join and you're still with us, if you are willing to post your answer in the chat window, I know some of you may be in a space that isn't conducive to be able to talk. So please feel free to post your responses in the chat window for the group to participate as well.
Also, I encourage you to, obviously this is an educational conference, so I'm sure a lot of you are talking about collaboration in the classroom, but by all means, share about your own personal experience with collaboration.
Absolutely. All right, Nathan, I'm going to go ahead and start bringing folks back in. I will let you know when everybody is back so you can continue.
Great.
All right, Nathan, it looks like everybody is back with us. You may jump back in.
Great. Yeah, I was just reading through the chat here and looking at the things that were being said. I hope you had good conversations in the breakout. And just to be clear, I facilitate a lot of rapid design challenges, and I always start with this question because it usually generates a lot of conversation, good conversation, and it helps to understand more about the why of like, why would we do a rapid design challenge? So among the things that you mentioned, there's 6 things that we're gonna talk about today. I'm sure there's more than 6 things that we could mention. But the first thing that is a big one that can get in the way of good collaboration is quote unquote bad chemistry. So sometimes it takes great effort for a team to collaborate because of interpersonal issues that are hard to identify. Sometimes teams just don't, quote, click, which can add stress. Another issue is pre-existing power dynamics. Now, personally, this is something I deal with a lot because I like to participate in the collaboration with teachers through a project, but there's a power differential because of my role. So that's something that I'm acutely aware of. And so I try to be careful about that. But sometimes in groups, there are serious issues of power, even with students. These can be formal, like what I just mentioned, or informal. Maybe there's some bullying that's happening, or maybe you know, the child's older or physically larger. There's a lot of ways there can be a power dynamic. But this force can drive the momentum of the collaboration and prevent ideas from being considered. Preference to be autonomous, to work alone. Some participants would simply prefer to work on their own, and this mindset can make it difficult for them to negotiate within a group. Then there's a desire to act without negotiating. So some participants just want to push forward through projects without deferring to the group. They'd prefer to do rather than to talk about how to do, and this can create tensions. It's also likely to shut out other participants. For some, trust is a major issue. So whether it's trust in other participants or the process in general, a lack of trust will prevent them from participating fully. And groups lose when trust isn't built among the participants. And finally, I think this one was a big one that was mentioned. There's no one has taught the students the way to collaborate. So there's no rules for conduct. If nothing else, unstructured and unmediated open-ended collaborations suffer when there aren't norm reference protocols for collaboration. So like all fluencies, and that's what we call collaboration here at our school, like all fluencies, collaboration must be taught its own terms. These terms can facilitate the difficult process and can be mediated effectively when there's a common understanding at the beginning of the process. So a good example would be the criteria that teachers use before they ideate a public product. That way, after all their ideas are on the table, they have some rules for conduct. They know which criteria should be used to facilitate that conversation. So I'm sure there's many more, but those are some big ones that we're gonna kind of focus on today. So we went through a lot. I showed you how this planning process works here at A2 STEAM using the framework from PBL Works. So the question once again is, where would a rapid design challenge fit into this progression? I wonder if there's any guesses. If you have a guess, please put it in the chat. Any guesses? That's okay if you don't want to take a risk. Before research B, interesting, okay, yep. Okay, so it's possible that a rapid design challenge really might be able to fit anywhere and do well. However, we always want to make sure, oh, I see another guess up here. Okay, so we always want to make sure that rapid design challenges happen before the project starts. And this is important because we're going to talk right now about the concept of high stakes and low stakes. So we say high stakes for this part of the project for many reasons. Not only are students expected to engage in rigorous academic activity through project-based learning, they're also designing a product for a real audience. So this can create a lot of stress. While some stress is healthy, it's important for it to be distributed progressively. So rapid design challenges are specifically not tied to instructional outcomes because the goal is to teach norms and protocols through a low stakes experience. When the inquiry phase of a project is ending and it's time for them to engage in creative collaboration, skills and processes that are taught through a rapid design challenge can be reintroduced during that time and contextualized to the project. So you could put a rapid design challenge in the middle. Often it's a great way to just kind of freshen things up, but I would recommend always having rapid design challenges before a project if you do plan on putting a rapid design challenge in the middle of the inquiry. And so this is what is in fact specifically recommended by PBL Works in their strategies handbook. In addition to other structures and activities, rapid design challenges can help create a normative culture around collaboration. And so the question is, what should we want from a rapid design challenge? So far we've gotten a glimpse into the project planning process, and we've discussed some of the pitfalls of collaboration. And from that, we can generate a list of criteria for rapid design challenges that would be helpful for participants to feel empowered and motivated to collaborate. So rapid design challenges, of course, should teach collaboration norms. As discussed earlier, negotiating skills that participants can learn to use will help them to collaborate with less mediation. Rapid design challenges should engage students. If the delivery is dry, participants might not see a reason to learn the skills. Rapid design challenges should be fun. Rapid design challenges should provide opportunities for feedback and revision, An important part of design is the ability to revise and iterate, and this is an essential feature of the design thinking process. Rapid design challenges should spark creativity. If a design challenge can also give participants an opportunity to access their own inherent sense of innovation, it will be a more authentic transfer of skills when it comes time to be used in a high-stakes project. Rapid design challenges should be teachable as a quick lesson. So while they shouldn't be rushed, they're designed to be standalone activities. And the longest rapid design challenge that I've facilitated took place over 2 hours. So rapid design challenges can, however, be distributed at intervals like we talked about earlier, where appropriate, especially if the facilitator wants to focus on a specific skill and have participants reflect on that aspect. Finally, rapid design challenges should be accessible. Depending on the facilitator's comfort level, resources, and time, a rapid design challenge should be something that's possible to do well. Otherwise, the participants may not benefit from all that it has to offer, or worse, leave confused or agitated. So we're gonna look at some. And hopefully after we, sorry, that's a bell over here at A2 Steam. After we go through these, you can be thinking about maybe a rapid design challenge that's appropriate for you. And there are likely many more approaches than what is outlined for the remainder of this presentation. But what I can speak to are these approaches because we use them with consistency at A2 Steam. Team building activities are not strictly rapid design challenges, but they're good. They're a good baseline for comparison. I'm sure many people are very familiar with team building challenges, and they can accomplish many of the goals that we just outlined. Should be noted that PBL Works identifies team activities, in fact, as an effective means of building culture. The team building activities that I'll be referencing are what are called the Zing Train set from the Zingerman's business training model. Zingerman's is like a deli here in Ann Arbor, but they have this huge capacity for building business management techniques. And so they have this whole curated set of team building activities that are really high quality. And so we're lucky enough to have them here at A2 Steam. But I reference them because they're very high quality, and some team building challenges that you might find on the internet just through a search aren't that great. I'm going to outline what specifically is good about this set. We're also going to look at a rapid design challenge curated by the Institute of Design at Stanford. We're going to look at Liz Gerber's mockups and a rapid design challenge developed here at A2 Steam. And so with each example, I've given a rating from the categories that we just talked about here. And these assessments, it should be noted, are anecdotal. So this is kind of my take, but also a take from a conversation that I've had with teachers here at A2 Steam. So team building activities are characterized in a few unique ways. They involve participants working in teams, set out to solve a puzzle or a similar challenge with constraints. Teams are usually in competition with each other, even if competition's never directly stated. They're collaborating within their team, but they're often trying to solve the puzzle before other teams do. And often there's like a special trick or catch to it, right? So there's like, if you kind of figure out this secret, you can do it really well. Teams that communicate well usually are successful, but if they don't have specific participants that are able to emerge as leaders, it doesn't matter how good their communication is, because it's hard for these puzzles to be solved without some leadership. So these roles tend to just kind of emerge. We don't designate roles within team building activities. Okay, so team building in many ways is that low-hanging fruit if you're considering building norms and culture before a project begins. Now again, this graph represents anecdotal analysis. So this is just from the perspective of teachers at A2 Steam. Participants usually enjoy these challenges, and most of them are pretty quick. Depending on the complexity of the challenge, they also may be fairly accessible. But team building doesn't have much in the way for feedback and iteration. I'm sure you could make an argument that that has that capacity. But when we talk feedback and iteration, there's specific things we look for in comparison to rapid design challenges. It leaves opportunities for participants to build trust. However, and it doesn't have many explicit, there's that bell again, sorry. It doesn't have many explicit collaboration norms per se that might transfer to that high stakes design challenge. Some could make a good argument. That's in fact why I gave it a 7 as opposed to a lower rating, that trust is really important. But when we talk about a transfer of skills, we're talking about something more along the lines of a protocol rather than simply just that trust that's built up through relationship building. So the D-School Gift Giving Challenge is, as I was saying, I was referencing the HFLI network, which is where I used to work in Detroit. This is something I first did when I was working there. And it's an excellent introduction to rapid design challenges if you're ready to teach a more structured approach to collaborative norms. And as a side note, what I find is best about this challenge is it's really best for adults, to be honest with you. There's other versions of this that could be scaled down. But if you're interested in teaching your staff design thinking, they've kind of curated this whole set of resources and videos that literally walks you step by step through it, and they even have a facilitation guide. So if you're in the position where you could be delivering some professional development on the design thinking process, all you need is about an hour. It's better if you have a bit more than an hour, but you can totally run this rapid design challenge for a staff. So the protocols are simple and well scaffolded. And as I said earlier, the materials are free online, and all you need are a few maker materials, and you can kick off this challenge in short order. The process takes partners through a user-centered design session while addressing each aspect of design thinking. So briefly, first, partners interview each other while taking notes about their gift-giving expectations. Next, they dig deeper, asking probing questions. Participants take their learning and structure it as a problem statement. Then they make 5 sketches of radical solutions to the problem. They pitch their ideas back to their partner, they get feedback, and they make a larger sketch that incorporates that feedback. And then they build a mock-up or a representation of the solution and receive a final set of structured feedback. It's a lot to do, but that's why we call it a rapid design challenge. So the D-School Gift Giving Challenge has a very different distribution of qualities than team building. This challenge has many, many embedded opportunities for feedback and iteration using a norm reference model. There are also specific norms taught for collaboration using turn-based protocols and roles. And when I say roles, it's not assigned roles. It's kind of like an A and B switch. So if there's trust built during this challenge, it happens through process rather than with a puzzle. Compared to other challenges, however, this is probably the least engaging. There's a lot of process involved, which can make the experience feel constrained at times for some participants. What compounds this factor is that participants are designing for real people, which raises the stakes. So if we want these to be low stakes challenges, you're getting into kind of a bit of a muddy area here. Mock-ups is a card game developed by Dr. Liz Gerber, and Dr. Gerber is a faculty member at the, I believe it's pronounced Segal, I'm not sure, Design Institute at Northwestern University, and the founder of Design for America, a design idea incubator. This rapid design challenge is very different from the D-School Gift Giving Challenge. Structurally, it spends little time investigating and framing the problem. Instead, most of the vital energy is focused on designing and building. So this game gives some recommendations for different organizational structures, as you might be able to see there on the cards on the right. What the game does well is compel its participants to think abstractly about what's called user-centered design, which is another way of saying design thinking, and the combinations are endless. So the way it goes is that participants pick one white card, one gray card, and one black card. On the white card is a type of, quote, user, which is design thinking language for who is using the product that you're designing. On the gray card is the need that that user has. And so the trick is to design a solution that meets that need. And then on the black card is an additional constraint that must be incorporated into the design. What's most evident from mockups is that it's a lot of fun. So if you're interested in trying out some new maker materials in a rapid design challenge, this is a good way to go. I wouldn't recommend doing this challenge though if you do not have robust maker materials. And that can be simple things. You don't need saws and hammers and micro bits or anything like that, but a good variety of maker materials like pipe cleaners, construction paper, and things to put it together with glue and tape is really valuable for this. So what is most evident from, as I said that, sorry. So if you're interested in trying out, if your interest is actually focused on developing clearer protocols, it might be worthwhile to see if any design thinking protocols could be used to supplement mockups, but those instructions wouldn't come with the box, and I wouldn't recommend trying to do that unless you're familiar with those design thinking protocols. Mockups has a distribution of qualities that's more similar to team building than the D-School gift giving challenge. This challenge is on the whole more engaging, it's quick, and it's open to emergent creativity, more so than team building. However, it could benefit from more structures that transfer to a high stakes challenge. So finally, the Department of Cardboard Hats. So this is something that we developed here at A2 STEAM. It was designed and created a couple years ago in collaboration with our lead art teacher, Rachel Jensen, our lead Project Lead the Way teacher, and Project Lead the Way is our, as I said earlier, technology and engineering programming. Our lead PLTW teacher, Bill Van Loo, and several parents and students in the community also helped out. So this rapid design challenge borrows from the D-School protocols and a little of the random spontaneity and joy from mockups. Throughout the process are opportunities for group work and partner work, and the ultimate task is to build a cardboard hat that satisfies certain criteria. So I see a chat here. I'm just gonna, oh, okay. Okay. A little bit more about the Department of Cardboard Hats. So we built this hybridized approach with intentionality, but it took lots of experimenting and exposure to other models to get it quite right. And since then, it has been a staple in our community for PBL units, for professional development, locally hosted conferences, and parent events. In fact, I just did a session earlier today with a group of parents. And the key to its success has been identifying our needs, iterating, reflecting, iterating again, and then continuing to tweak it as needed. So as you can see, we involve ourselves in the process of design thinking when we're developing our own rapid design protocols. There are some great things about the Department of Cardboard Hats. However, it currently lacks scalability, and the process has yet to be thoroughly documented and published. So while I'm not in a position right now to share it with you, I have included a link to my website. And so if you're interested in learning more about it, you can send me an email through the contact form on my website. So what makes the Department of Cardboard Hats such an excellent, oh, you know, I'm sorry, I just went through all that, but I forgot to change the slide. So due to the complexity of this challenge, it requires a bit of training to facilitate well and requires some special supplies such as the cardboard wheel that you see here. That's something that we made, and it has kind of like a randomized effect of picking different types of hats. And it would also receive a higher feedback and iteration rating if there was a more authentic audience. So as stated earlier, however, there's this opportunity cost of an authentic audience because the stakes become a bit higher, and that can add stress. So if we're adding too much stress, it's not likely that the students will internalize those collaboration norms. So overall, this is how rapid design challenges compare to one another and to team building. And one more time, I just do want to point out this is not a study. This is our anecdotal analysis based on our own conversations. So by looking at this, it should be clear why we've decided to kind of make our own protocols. We really wanted to hybridize something that had that joy and spontaneity, like a team building activity and mock-ups, but also taught protocol, the D-School gift giving challenge. Just gonna look in the chat here. Yeah. So I hope you remember our second graders. Now, before their first big project, they enjoyed building a hat for mountain climbers that you can eat. And so norms and skills that they learned in the Department of Cardboard Hats did indeed transfer when it was time for them to collaborate through their design. Their games were fun and educational, and Family Game Night was a big hit. I hope you enjoyed hearing about how we use rapid design challenges. I'm setting aside the rest of the time right now. If you have any questions, I hopefully have some answers for you. So Shayla, I'm not sure if we just answer questions from the chat or if we have the ability to have people screencast, but I'm open to either.
Yeah, so typically we've been doing it through the chat just because we do have a lot of people in the session. But if you do have a pressing question that you want to articulate, you're welcome to take yourself off of mute. A big shout out to those of you who have been posting all the amazing resources in the chat. So if you continue to have ideas, websites, apps, things like that that you're using that have also helped support PBL in your building, we would love to have those added. As I mentioned earlier, we will be capturing the chat window and making those available as well following the conference. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and with the time remaining, we will give Nathan a chance to answer. In the meantime, Nathan, I'm going to ask you to stop sharing. I'm going to take back over. And I have just a couple of last minute things just to make sure. So Nathan, if you would just stop sharing for me.
Sure. Sorry.
That's okay. This crazy system that won't let me take over until you give me.
Oh, I see it. Yep, there we go.
There you go. Awesome. All right. Let me get my screen back up. Thank you again to all of you who were able to join. Just a couple of really quick things that I want to make sure I cover. Oh, I apologize. My screen is all over the place. If you will make your way back to the main agenda, that is where you will see a link next to Nathan's session to complete a 2-question survey for him. We will be providing that feedback directly back to each presenter. So I know Nathan would really appreciate it. Presenters are always looking for ways to grow as well. Presenting in a virtual setting, if you've never done it, can be a little tricky. So a lot of times they are looking for that feedback of what went really well and what are maybe some areas that they can continue to grow in the future. Also, if you are interested in learning more about some of the things that we have going on at the Friday Institute, upcoming events, conferences where we'll be presenting, the very bottom down here, you will see a go link to our PLLC newsletter. It's absolutely free. We send it out quarterly. Sometimes we'll do special editions if we have a lot of things coming up. We actually just issued one letting folks know about some conferences, some free MOOCs that we have. So again, if you get registered, you will get on that distribution list, and we would love to be able to share and stay connected with you. Again, please continue to populate into the chat window. We will leave the session open for just a couple more minutes if people have last minute questions or comments. Otherwise, we really appreciate you joining us. We will have another set of sessions starting at the top of the hour. And then we also have our closing keynote that will kick off at 5 o'clock Eastern. Thank you so much. And Nathan, thank you so much for sharing.
And Sheila, I just want to point out the one slide I did not get to was just a lot of links. So all the things that I shared, with exception to cardboard hats, simply because there's just a description of that, not instructional resources, are shared on that final slide if you want to look back to the presentation that was shared.
Perfect. And that's a great reminder. Thank you, Nathan. If you want to access his presentation, if you go back to that main agenda, you will see a link in the first column to his presentation deck. So yes, you can go back and reference it as well. All right. Thank you, everyone. Nathan, have a great rest of the afternoon. And thank you so much for sharing. It was great.
Thanks for joining.